Hey, welcome to Conversations with a Therapist podcast. I'm Jennifer Kyalo. I am a counseling psychologist and I am a writer, and I am also the host of this show. My work focuses on breaking down complex psychological concepts into practical and actionable frameworks that you can implement today to build a meaningful life. If that is something that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to subscribe to this podcast and share the link with at least one person in your contact list. You never know who desperately needs to hear this message today, and you could be the person that connects them to a resource that changes the rest of their life. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you have any questions about psychology, then send them to the email address in the description box. With that said, let's jump right into today's episode. Having depression and feeling depressed are two different things, and they are often treated as the same thing, which makes it very difficult for most people to identify when there's a problem that needs immediate attention. So let's differentiate those two things. I'm going to start with feeling depressed. Feeling depressed is something temporary. Feeling depressed is an emotion. As it says in the name, it's feeling depressed. So it's a feeling and it's fleeting. You can experience feeling depressed, especially when something horrible has happened. Maybe you have had a bad day. Maybe you have had a major loss. Maybe you've been fired from your job. You've had a terrible fight with somebody that is close to you. You can feel very depressed when you are experiencing something monumental, something that is outside of your ordinary experiences, and it's draining you emotionally. And you'll notice when you're feeling depressed, most of the time you feel like you want to just lie down, you want to lock yourself in your room, get under the covers, and just like disappear for a minute and not have to deal with anything or anyone. It's the time when you feel you want to be left alone, to just do your own thing, whatever that thing is, and you really don't want to engage with other people. The thing about this feeling of depression is that it passes, and it often passes when you are in company with other people who can help you deal with those feelings, or when you have very effective emotional regulation techniques that you've mastered over time. For example, if you have just been fired from your job or you've had a horrible day, if you hang out with somebody who is close to you, somebody you love, somebody who loves you, somebody who cares for you, somebody who lifts your spirits, you're likely to start feeling better by the end of that encounter with them. So if, let's say, that has happened during the day and in the afternoon you go hang out with them, by evening you're feeling a little bit better compared to how you were feeling in the morning when that event happened. So with feeling depressed, it passes. It might feel heavier than your regular sadness. I don't know if there's regular sadness, but ordinarily you know when you feel sad, but then you know when you feel sadder than normal. Yeah. And so that can be the feeling of depression. Again, it's fleeting. It does not stay forever. If you practice emotional regulation techniques that are effective for you, it can help make you feel better. With feelings of depression, you don't necessarily have to go to therapy or to go and seek professional help or to get medication or anything, because these feelings ordinarily will dissipate when circumstances change. And also you'll notice that with feelings of depression, you still have hope that things will get better. You always have at the back of your mind the knowledge and the belief that this is temporary, it will pass just like everything else. So those feelings of depression are manageable in that sense. On the other hand, we have the main issue of being depressed. So being depressed is basically having clinical depression. And having clinical depression is basically having a mental illness. And having a mental illness requires professional support most of the time. You will know you have clinical depression, the disorder, when you go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they're going to use a couple of tests to find out whether you are having depression. For example, they can use something that is referred to as the DSM. That's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It's basically the Bible, but for mental health. For you to be diagnosed with depression by a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and they're using the DSM, for example, you will have to meet the criteria that is outlined in the DSM. And that is, you need to have at least 5 or more of the symptoms that have been highlighted in the DSM, and you need to have experienced them for more than 2 weeks. So you may be wondering, what are some of these symptoms that you need to have for you to be diagnosed with depression? So they include, number 1, you need to be experiencing that depressed mood that I spoke about in the beginning, that feeling depressed. Another symptom of depression is losing interest in things that you previously enjoyed. So for example, if you liked working out, or you liked reading, you liked going and hanging out with your friends, you liked doing things with other people, and suddenly in the last 2 or more weeks you have been isolating yourself and not doing those things, or even if you're doing them, you do not derive any pleasure out of them, then that is another symptom of depression. Another symptom is significant changes in your weight, either it's weight gain or weight loss, and significant changes in your appetite. Another symptom is significant changes in your sleep. It could be that you're having insomnia or you're sleeping too much. Another symptom of depression is feeling worthless, excessive guilt, inappropriate guilt over things that are not really on you. So when something happens, you take it upon yourself, you personalize a lot, and you have this guilt about why things are happening the way they're happening, and you're under the impression that most of those things are because of you. You're the reason behind them. So these feelings of guilt, excessive guilt that is not proportionate to the situation around, that could be a thing, as well as those feelings of worthlessness, hopelessness, and helplessness. And this will contribute to you having a very negative outlook towards the future. Remember when I said in the feelings of depression, you usually have at the back of your mind a knowing, like a belief that things are going to get better. When you are depressed, there's that underlying feeling of things will never get better. This will always be the way things are. I will continue to struggle, and I am never going to get out of this thing. This is going to be my life now, and things are really, really bad. And then on the other side, there's also the feelings of nobody cares about you, and the world is against you, and things are never going to change. Things are always going to be horrible, and people don't like you, and nobody really cares whatever happens to you. When it comes to feelings of depression and being depressed, one big significant difference is the fact that when you are depressed, when you have a clinical diagnosis of depression, it will be accompanied by recurring thoughts of suicide and recurring thoughts of death. And that's how we realize that there's a big problem, because this has shifted from just feeling depressed to being depressed. These are not the only symptoms of depression. Of course, there are several others. When you Google, you're going to get a whole list of them. I don't want to sound like Google right now, just listing them for you. When you're given a diagnosis for depression, you need professional support. That can look like medication or therapy, or both medication and therapy. Those two things always go hand in hand with some lifestyle changes. Some of the lifestyle changes that you may need to incorporate in your life when you've been given a diagnosis of depression is probably limiting your use of alcohol and other types of drugs, avoiding isolating yourself too much, especially when you know that isolating makes you feel worse. Something else you may do is probably be active and move your body. You may need to do some internal work, like challenging your negative thoughts, which can come up especially in those difficult days. The days that your mind tells you that things will never get better, my situation will never get better, I will always struggle. Those are the days that you challenge your negative thoughts even louder, with even more intensity. Rumination is another big one, where you keep going on and on and on, thinking about the same thing over and over again, especially those negative things that makes your situation worse. So when you are dealing with depression, the diagnosis and even the feelings as well, you will need to break that cycle of rumination. And again, these are things that are out there. Your therapist can help you, but also if you need any resources, I'm going to add the resources to the description box, and you can see some techniques you can use to deal with rumination and overthinking. If you are going through depression, there's a very high likelihood that you are also having a script in your mind that tells you that your problems are bigger than they really are. So you might find that your capacity to problem solve is challenged. I encourage you, when you're going through a difficult time, try to reach out to the people in your life who you know are really good problem solvers, people who are very good at critical thinking, people who can help you break down the situation you're going through and look for potential solutions to those problems. Because your mind can lie to you a lot. Your mind can be like, this problem can never be solved, you're the only one going through it, and things will never get better. But it's not true. And so you need to rely on the people around you who have the capacity to help you think clearer than you are when you are struggling with depression. I want to highlight that sometimes there's differences between how depression presents in women and how it presents in men. So you might find that in women, depression looks like a lot of stress, a lot of sadness, crying, sleep problems, things of that nature, and even just women being very aware of how they are feeling. And then in men, it might look like irritability, anger, and loss of interest in things they actually enjoyed, and just this tiredness and fatigue. For them, it's very physical in that sense. I'm not saying those are the only symptoms, and I think this can be attributed to just the societal expectations that are there for men and women when it comes to expressing what is happening in their internal world. If, for example, you're listening to this and you're thinking, I do not have those textbook symptoms of depression, but I'm still feeling that something is off, I am still feeling like I am going through depression, you might want to talk to a mental health service provider to help you understand how it looks like for you. If you don't have the symptoms that everybody talks about, that does not mean that your symptoms are not valid. It does not mean that your struggle is not valid. It is. I want to leave you with one exercise that I usually give people to think about when it comes to those feelings of depression and even being depressed. And that is to force yourself to recognize glimmers of hope and goodness, even when things are tough. Life is always going to present you with very difficult days. Life is always going to present you with very challenging situations. And it is up to you to look for those moments of positivity, moments of hope, and as I like to call them, glimmers of hope, and hold on to them. It's very easy for your mind to recognize when things are bad. Because it's very easy for your mind to do that, I always encourage people to now flip that script and start looking for the moments that are hard to see. The places where you find positivity, the places where you find gratitude and joy and hope. Because your mind doesn't need help finding negativity. It can find it on its own. So you have to put in the effort to look for the positive things that are happening around you and then include them in your day. One exercise that you can start doing today is grab your gratitude journal and ask yourself 3 questions. And the first question is, what went well today? You can ask yourself that question and sit for a minute or two to think about your entire day and what went well. Then ask yourself, how did I contribute to it? You've highlighted what went well, so how did you contribute to it? And the third question is, how can I repeat this thing tomorrow? Or how can I enhance it? How can I have this happen a lot more in my life? And the moment you start looking for the moments in your day that went well, even if you had a bad day, you will not fail to see a glimmer of hope. This is a very simple strategy that you can start using today. Thank you for coming through to the podcast. I hope this has been helpful. I hope this is going to help you deal with the challenges surrounding feeling depressed or being depressed. If you need mental health support, you can check out the description of this episode. You're going to find resources in there. Some of them are free and others are ways that you can contact a therapist. So yeah, get in touch with us and we will definitely connect you to the therapist that you need to speak to. With that said, have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves, take care of your mental health, and I will see you in the next one.